Hello.
Hi.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of Wicked
Mysterious.
I'm your host, Katie.
And I'm Danny.
And this is
Mini Mystery Monday.
Awesome. So, it's October, and it's feeling very October-y.
Yes.
Like, it feels like it's January, truthfully, right now.
Yes.
It's Brick over here in Massachusetts.
October is the best month.
Yeah, for your birthday.
Yes.
I disagree, but November's the best month. I disagree with that as well.
Cap.
I'd say like June. I love June.
June is a good.
Yeah, June is just perfect. Perfect weather over here. So yes, we have a mini today, and since it's October and close to Halloween, I figured it would be a good time to throw a paranormal in there because, you know, ghosts are like all Halloween-y and shit.
Yeah.
And people
Cool.
have been asking for paranormal, and I've been like reluctant, so I'm like, it's perfect.
Yeah. It's hard to find good
It is.
ghost stories.
It is, because it's so like opinionated, and like obviously without like scientific evidence, you know how it is, there's always going to be skeptics, but yeah.
Yeah, I saw a whole series on the Warrens.
Yeah.
And they investigated a bunch of the most famous hauntings like Amityville and then a few in other countries and even the doll Annabelle, and there's a lot of like speculation on whether or not they were legit, and those are the most documented.
Right.
But they're also kind of not really
It's hard.
believable.
It's hard.
So,
yeah, it is super hard.
Ooh, do you want to fit in here our ghost stories?
No, not in this one.
Okay.
But I was actually going to bring up to you when we weren't recording about next week that maybe
That's a great idea.
we could do that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's what's coming at you next week.
Yeah.
But all right, so let's get our what would we call this? Should we come up with something like
Haunting hats?
haunting hats?
Yeah. Put your hunting hats on.
Oh, cute. No, I was
Not
thinking
really.
of something to do with like mysterious. Like whatever. Cut this out.
Put
Okay.
on your mystery shoes.
Okay, that's cute. I
not.
can work with that. All right. All right. Ghost phenomenon is widely debated, but encounters have been recorded dating back centuries. Many unexplained experiences can only be chalked up to something that of paranormal, no matter how skeptical one can be. In 1989, in a small rural town in Georgia, a 3-year-old girl began conversing with a kind imaginary friend, but that imaginary friend had a name that matched previous resident history in the neighborhood that had died long ago. This is a ghost story about a family terrorized for years by paranormal events and one of the biggest haunting cases in Georgia. Let's get into it.
Oh, snap.
It's about to get real ghostly and spooky and shit.
Yeah.
It was February of 1989, and couple Andrew and Lisa Wyrick, along with their 3-year-old daughter Heidi, were shopping around to buy their very first home in Georgia. The small rural town of Ellerslie was located in Harris County and had caught their eye because it was a really small town, and they loved the idea of that. They wanted to raise their child in that small town vibe. We know what that small town vibe is. Do you like raising your kid in a small town?
Mostly.
Yeah,
For
me
the
too.
most part.
Most part too.
I like knowing people, but I don't like people knowing my business, you know? But I like running into the same faces over and over.
Yeah,
I think
me
that's
too.
cool.
I really do. I like going to like sporting events and
Yeah.
like all the kids knowing everybody.
Yeah.
And even just like if we go anywhere in the neighborhood, like I like that.
Yeah, me too.
So at the time, Ellerslie had a population of only just about a little over 3,000 people.
Wow, that's small.
Very small.
That's a third of the size of our town.
Right. So it's real small. And the people in town, being so small, they obviously knew everybody.
The people were small?
The people were small. They enjoyed hunting, fishing, and church, mostly. So they were religious. The Wyricks checked out a small ranch-style home, and it was cute, just perfect, they thought, for their very first home. And they fell in love with it. They made an offer, and it was accepted, like, immediately, and they began moving in as soon as they could. But not long after they moved in, little Heidi began talking with an imaginary friend. Now, imaginary friends are quite common in kids, as we know. Did you have an imaginary friend, Danny?
I had 2.
Oh, shit. Excuse me.
They were like a package deal, though. I don't remember this, but that's what my mom tells me.
Interesting.
Their names were Cecil and Karen.
That is very interesting.
So weird.
Like, and then, Cecil, that's a very weird name for a kid to come up with.
Yeah. And my mom said that one day they were gone, and she asked me what happened. And I told her that they climbed a tree and drowned in a bird's nest. And I was like, you didn't take me to a doctor or
Whoa, yeah.
And my mom said, no, you were just so matter of fact about it.
Wow.
So,
okay.
There's my imaginary friends. My brother had one named Robbie.
Cool.
And Robbie used to have like crushes on all my friends.
Huh.
And Robbie would be like in the room because I was a lot older than my brother. Yeah. So I was like 10 and my brother was like...
That's so cool.
No, I was like 13 and my brother was like 3.
Wow.
So he'd be like, Robbie's behind the door.
That is so cool.
Robbie really likes you. And then my son had an imaginary friend named Baby Jackson.
That's right.
Yes, and he would blame everything on Baby Jackson. Everything was Baby Jackson's fault. And Baby Jackson also went down the tub drain, just like my imaginary friend, and we never saw him again.
Interesting.
He said, well, we don't have an imaginary baby anymore. That's what he said at like 4 or 5.
So great.
Yeah.
So great.
What about you?
I did not have an imaginary friend. I did
not.
No. Nope. And I mean, none of my kids except one of my sons saw, a past somebody of mine that I was in a relationship with before he was born who had deceased. My son saw him a lot and talked about him a lot. But other than that, nope, no imaginary friends at all in my household growing up or that I know of in my family. But it is really common. It's so common that by 7 years of age, 65% of kids have reported having an imaginary friend. And the imagination really seems to come alive around like 3 years old. Yeah. And often it lasts up to like 11, but sometimes obviously it can go more. But I have a theory on that though. I think that like the imaginary friend thing, or if kids are really seeing things, they're seeing them right away from birth, but they're not able to articulate it well enough to explain or know it's different or weird until they're 3.
Right.
Because even at 2, some kids can talk a lot and it's just not, it's just not as like enough.
Yeah. And when we did the Slender Man episode, the Tulpa, a lot of imaginary friends are considered Tulpas because the kids that see them really believe that they see them, and it becomes like, even if the kid themselves, their imagination made it up, it becomes like an actual entity because of whatever like goes into tulpas becoming tulpas. But
wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so of course, when Heidi started to talk to this new friend, her parents, Andrew and Lisa, were pretty sure that the move had just been real stressful. And it was Heidi's way of adapting and feeling comfortable with all the new changes, which would make a lot of sense to me too. Lisa was a stay-at-home mom, and she often entertained Heidi's imagination about it. She would play along with the little silly requests for extra food and make a little plate for her friend and extra drinks and items and stuff. So, did your mom play along with your imaginary friend too? Like give a little half a sandwich for Cecil?
Cecil and Karen. She would have had to do 2 sandwiches. I don't know.
That's true. Or at least a half each,
Yeah.
But you should ask her, did you entertain that and play along with it? Or did you just Yeah. It's interesting. So their new home had a nice little backyard, and they had a swing set over there for Heidi. And often days, Heidi would entertain herself out there. Now, I was like, oh, she's 3 years old and she's out there by herself. But I mean, this was back in the 80s and it was safe. It was a small, nice little area. And her mother would let her go and play, and she would just watch from the kitchen window as she did her kitchen duties and, house chores and all that. But she reported that she would see her out there a lot. Whenever she would go to the swing set, she would just stand there and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk to somebody. And it was like she would prefer to talk over swing or play a lot of the time. And it would go on and on and on.
There's a very loud helicopter going over.
I don't know if I should wait. Sorry.
It's okay.
But yeah, that sounded low.
Yes, it was.
Well, there's going to be all kinds of things on the town page about that.
No.
A helicopter's flying low. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, like to the point of like she could see like a whole range of emotions in these conversations with this little girl, and but she still thought it was semi-adorable. At this point. And she couldn't get over, though, like how long, and she just wouldn't get bored of talking to nobody. So one day she was like, all right, I'm going to like dig deep and find out a lot of questions about Heidi, which about Heidi's new friend. Like, I feel like I would have did that immediately.
Yeah.
The second, but I guess a lot of time went on and they didn't want to pry because they didn't want to put more into her head. Yeah. And they kind of just wanted to like leave it alone.
Yeah.
But after a while, she's like, no, I need to see like what other information I can get on this. So she asked, Heidi's mom, Lisa, asked her if her friend had a name, and she said yes. His name is Mr. Gordy.
Oh, I know this one.
I knew you were going to know it as soon as I said his name. So she found that name to be chilling because, just like Cecil, it's a weird-ass name to come out with.
Yeah.
Definitely not what you're expecting. She was expecting like a little girly name or a little boy name or something. So Gordy was definitely a shocker. So now Heidi's mom needs to know, like, what does he look like? And she needed all the deets. You feel me? So Heidi described him to be an old man with silver hair and a black suit and a hat with shiny black shoes. Very descriptive for a 3-year-old, for sure. And she said he always looked like that every time. When Lisa asked if Mr. Gordy was kind, she enthusiastically said yes, that she never felt scared by him. So Lisa was incredibly freaked out about it. She's like, whatever. Mr. Gordy is just an imaginary friend, So Mr. Gordy and Heidi were together every day, and he would play in her room with her with toys and outside in the yard. And Heidi would often walk around holding an invisible hand. Lisa felt something had to be going on deeper, but whenever she would turn to her husband Andrew's opinion, he reminded her that it's just normal kid stuff and let it go. And so they continued to just allow them to be besties until one day, Heidi told her mom one day that Mr. Gordy said there was money buried in the backyard. Mm-hmm. I'd be like, Gordy, show me right the hell now. Point your little invisible
Ghost
hand at where it is. So don't know what came of that. But anyway. So one afternoon when Lisa was cooking Heidi lunch, the doorbell rang. And it wasn't uncommon because everybody in the neighborhood was super close. They were always coming over and chatting, which I would not like. I want warning. I want to know when you're coming. So it was not uncommon for her to go and answer the door, this little 3-year-old girl. So that's what she did while Lisa was cooking lunch. And Lisa's heart sank when Heidi came rushing back into the kitchen saying that there was a man on the porch with a bandaged hand and blood all over it and all over him, saying that his name was Con. Lisa rushed to the door thinking that somebody needed medical attention, and there was nobody there. No one anywhere in sight at all. And Lisa then said that this is when she hurried locking all the doors and grabbed a knife out of instinct and called her husband and was like, get home because this weird bloody ass man was on my property and I don't know what his intention was. Might try to kidnap our kid or whatever. He might still be here. Can you come home? So her husband does come home. And they do a whole neighborhood sweep asking all the people around in the neighborhood if they've seen anybody weird walking around with blood on them. And at this point, I'm like, why wouldn't you call the police if you're that concerned? Again, don't know why, but no report was noted anywhere about calling the police. So, yep, they went around looking. Nobody had seen him. At this point, Lisa thought possibly Con could be Mr. Gordy's first name. Like, she was like, maybe she just didn't recognize her friend if he looked bloody or something. So she was like doing investigating on Con Gordy, like first and last name. But obviously there was no results for that. She was like feeling a little better that there was no results. But, she was like, my kid just saw a bloodied person. So she's like, do I need to look into psychologists or what? So apparently Lisa had a sister named Joyce, and she was looking for a new home too. And she actually bought the house right next door to her sister.
Okay.
So buying the house next door, of course, sisters are super excited to spend time together like that. And it's cool because here she is, her daughter's like saying she sees dead people or imaginary people. And it's like good to have that support, I'm sure. So anyway, when she was telling her sister about it, she was like, you really need to like push to find this guy. Like, you need to look into this, because she really believed it was something more than just an imaginary friend.
Yeah.
So it was actually her sister who took everything by the reins and reached out to the real estate agent that sold her house. And she was able to locate the previous owner, and her name was Catherine Ledford. And she'd owned that property, but she also grew up in that neighborhood. Her family had owned the home. And so they were able to get together and discuss the history of the neighborhood. So Joyce mentions to her Con, and the name's Con and the name's Gordy, and immediately Catherine's connected and verifies that Mr. James Gordy did in fact own that property, and he had died in 1974. Catherine stated, quote, I knew Mr. Gordy when I was a small child, and Mr. Gordy owned a real estate company in Columbus, and for many years, he was a Sunday school superintendent at our church up here, Ellison Methodist Church, end quote. Catherine brought several photos of her family members growing up, but none of Mr. Gordy, although she did agree that Heidi's description of James Gordy was completely accurate and that he always wore a suit and tie and shiny black boot shoes. They called Heidi in to observe photographs of Catherine's family members, and it wasn't long before Heidi pointed out another familiar person, the man with a bloody bandage and shirt on, Con. Except Catherine told Lisa that his name was Lon Bachelor. Lon, end quote, Lon lived here when he was a young man. He died in 1957 of cancer, and he lost his hand, I would say, before he was 20 years old in a cotton gin up here in Ellerslie. End quote. So that was Catherine's uncle, Con, which was really Lon, and must have been a misunderstanding. Now, Lisa realized her daughter could see dead people. And once Lisa explained to her daughter that her friends were dead, Heidi wanted to go to the graveyard and visit Mr. Gordy's grave. Remember, at just 3 years old at the time, she gets out of the car and runs and beelines it right to his grave.
Wow.
Without any instruction at all. She knew exactly where it was. Andrew and Lisa were obviously concerned, and with their daughter so young, they weren't sure what the best course of action was yet, but they felt that she may needed some sort of distraction and support. So what better way than to get a dog, right?
Right.
Heidi was really happy, of course, to have a dog, because who wouldn't? With little puppy cuddles. But soon the dog began to growl at nothing in the house, with its fur standing straight up, and most often down like hallways, which is so creep. The dog sadly did not last long in the home. It disappeared. The Wyricks reported it, ran off, and it never came home. Aww. So sad. The interactions with Mr. Gordy were almost every single day, and Lon would often interact as well. Over time, the whole family began to experience many more paranormal occurrences, like cabinets opening and slamming on their own. Weird, eerie feelings would come over people that were in the home. Sometimes people wouldn't even want to go in the home because they just felt very uneasy. Chairs would move as if they were like pulled out to come and sit, like somebody was sitting with them, like freaky. Lisa was experiencing things a lot more than Andrew because he was gone so much from the home. He was really only home at night. He worked so much. So she was seeing like all the daily occurrences more than him. But in bed every night, Lisa would hear voices in the ceiling directly above the bed. Andrew couldn't hear it. She's the only one that could hear it. It was like haunting. And obviously she was losing a lot of sleep over that.
Right.
So I'm sure the loss of sleep plus all those weird things going on, you're getting really loopy at this point.
I've hallucinated from not sleeping.
Yeah, it's serious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can only imagine.
Yeah.
So Lisa does the only great thing she can think of to do, and she calls her pastor, and she's like, my pastor's going to give me the answers. And he tells her, ghosts are not real, but quite possibly you could have demons haunting you because demons are real.
Okay.
So Lisa's thinking, great, I have demons chanting my name now, and yeah, this is just not so much pretty good. Then, to add just a little extra twist to the story, Lisa becomes pregnant, and she's having a baby girl.
She's having Khan's baby.
Imagine. It's Lon, by the way.
I know.
It was shortly after learning their family would be growing that Heidi started talking about a dark shadow in her room.
Oh, no.
Mm-hmm. The dark shadow had no face. As I was typing this, I was like, Danny's going to say, oh, no.
Mm-hmm.
When it was around, it would become freezing in the room. And she was starting to become poked, pinched, and her hair was getting pulled whenever this shadow figure was around. Heidi was very upset over this spirit. It was like the first spirit that she was like freaked out about, and it wasn't long before she was waking up with scratches on her body. So her first time waking up, she had 3 deep scratches on the side of her face, and that was like really concerning because it clearly was not done by her own nails. They were like deep. The very next morning, her dad, Andy, woke up with a burning feeling on his side and realized that he also had 3 deep scratches down his side, and there was also some on his face. Heidi was sure that it was the dark shadow person with no face, and it continued happening for the next 4 nights in a row, reportedly, that Andrew was attacked in his sleep. Fast forward to February 3rd of 1994, Heidi's new baby sister was born, Jordan Wyrick, and soon after, Andrew and Lisa decided it was time to get a doctor involved and called up a parapsychologist named Dr. William Roll. He was very interested in the case, and he found pictures of Mr. Gordy in hopes that Heidi would be able to identify him, and she did identify him. In a lineup of all different people, she picked him out. Dr. Roll reported, having spoken to Heidi and her parents, I'm even more convinced that we are dealing with genuine parapsychological experiences. Now, parapsychology, for you if you do not know, is the study of alleged psychic phenomena, extrasensory perception, telepathy, pre-recognition, clairvoyance, psychokinesis, also telekinesis, and psychometry? Psychometry? It says psychometry. Like no O, psychometry. And other paranormal claims, for example, those related to near-death experiences, synchronicities, and apparitional experiences.
Are we considered parapsychologists at this point?
Yeah, right?
We don't investigate. Well, I guess we should kind of investigate.
It would be hilarious if we called ourselves that. Hilarious. Why does little Heidi seem to possess this ability to see these people that have already passed on? And how could the injuries be explained? Well, Dr. Roll could not explain the injuries, but he suggested that the history he had learned from Lisa and Joyce with their mom, and her mom also reported to have seen ghosts when they were young. He thinks that it was a critical part to the puzzle, and that Heidi's grandmother and great-grandmother also shared the same ESP or extrasensory perception. The Wyricks called in 2 different psychics, and both of them reviewed no information on the encounters or experiences before their investigation in the home, and both pinpointed both good and bad energies in the home. One psychic claimed that their fireplace was an active portal, like a spirit door. So the family's like, let's ask our pastor to bless the shit out of this house now as a last resort. So they asked their pastor to come and bless the demons. And he does, and they're relieved. They're like, yay, it saved us, until it didn't. And that night was one of the worst encounters that they had ever had. The worst and the last, thank God, because you're probably wondering why the hell didn't this family move? Because that's what I keep thinking the whole time. But
yeah,
it's not that easy financially for everybody, to do that. So that night, after the blessing of the demons, Heidi had a very bad feeling in her bed, really, really bad, and she sensed that dark spirit there. So the dark spirit, I think, was pissed about all the holy water.
Yeah.
So she sensed the headless shadow, and suddenly it grabbed her at the ankles and ripped her up and hung her upside down, where God. She screamed her brains out, of course, and her parents rushed in to her and witnessed her hanging there with her ankles up in the air, screaming. God. So that was it. That's when they listed their home, and they sold it, and they got out of there immediately after that. Yeah. That was the last encounter. Well, bad one.
You were a realtor, right? Yeah. What's the rule about hauntings and houses?
So I looked up Georgia's. Yeah. So in Massachusetts, we are actually one of the only 4 states that mentions the word paranormal in the disclosure laws. Yeah. So like it mentions the word paranormal in us, Minnesota, New Jersey, and New York. Okay. That's the only 4 states. Every other state, they'll mention death having to either be legally disclosed or not. But in Georgia, you don't have to disclose a death. Obviously, they don't say paranormal in their disclosure laws, but they don't say you don't have to disclose a death in the house unless you're asked. Then if you know, you do. And the same thing for Massachusetts. You don't have to disclose.
I was going to say, nobody disclosed to me that.
Any paranormal stuff at all or death unless asked. Okay. So if you asked in here, about yours, they would have had to legally tell you if you said, did anybody die here? Yeah. So good to know for anybody in Mass. Yeah. Or really anywhere. I mean, a lot of states, you do have to disclose any information that you know if you're asked. Yeah. So
it's interesting that only some states mention
paranormal, and we're one of them, which I think is really cool. Yeah. Yeah. It's where all the weirdos live.
Yeah. I can't wait to tell my ghost story.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I already picked which one I'm going to do.
Yeah, me too.
It's actually my dad's ghost story, but it affected my life. Yeah. In a lot of ways. Yeah. So I'm really excited.
We'll save it.
I know. All right. So, once they moved, Heidi continued to see good and bad spirits all over, all the way up until now in her life. Actually, I don't even know if she's alive now. I'm sure she is. I didn't look into that, but throughout her whole life, she went to college, she got married, she had a kid, and she was doing extra well with all of her extrasensory perceptions. Wow. Yeah. She got a hold of it and managed it, but apparently could see good and bad spirits everywhere she went. Very interesting. Also, another interesting little note that I didn't talk about in this episode, their family reports that when Heidi's little sister Jordan turned 3, she started talking to a little girl. And that little girl was confirmed to be by Heidi a good spirit. Like Heidi could also see her and was like, we're good. She's a good spirit. She's good. So if it is something in the family that they have, some kind of sensory difference in the brain, I do truly believe that, we've talked about this before, some people use different parts of their brain. Yeah. And there's sometimes damages that happen to brains where brains fix itself on other parts to compensate, and maybe things spark and start getting used that, we don't usually use as humans. Yeah.
Yeah, that 100%, that's proven scientifically, but with neurons and stuff in your neural pathways and how they prune they themselves. And when you're a kid and you're told there's no such thing as ghosts, your brain will literally prune those neurons so that you don't see them anymore. So I believe that, but what I don't get about ghosts and stuff is why are they back here? Because I don't want to believe that they're trapped here because that is so sad. I can't handle it. But also,
we should save it for the next episode because I think I know I have a very big theory on why they're here. Okay. And so I'm sure you probably have a little idea too, or your own thoughts, right?
Yeah. I don't really know.
Yeah.
It's one of those things
it's going to be a good episode, I think. Yeah. It's going to be a really fun episode because it's going to be different. And all right. It's our first time telling personal stories, right?
Yeah. Well, I did Hatman, but that was more about
and it's a real thing.
Yeah.
So Heidi's mother believed that Gordy was a guardian angel sent to her to help her with her gift, to navigate her through being able to see all of this crazy shit. That's what Heidi's mother thinks anyway. I mean, that's a sweet way to look at it.
Yeah.
But Mr. Gordy was really kind. So that's it. That's my mini for a ghostly October episode.
Yay.
That's it.
Thank you so much. I loved it.
All right.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Thanks for telling a friend. We love you.
Yes. Thank you for telling a friend. I'm so glad that you just said that because I was thinking that this morning. Shout out to our friends who are sharing the shit out of us, like whether by mouth or,
Share by mouth. Thank you.
Yeah, please share by mouth. It's late.
Like a bad germ.
Tired. But yeah. Stay mysterious.